felt a chill run down your spine when a complete stranger walks into the room. Not just any chill, but a deep, primal feeling that something is off. That's exactly what happened to Clara. She was a night shift librarian, a lover of dusty old books and the quiet hum of the city sleeping. Her world was ordinary, predictable, and safe. At least, it was until he walked in. He moved with a silence that was unnatural, a grace that didn't belong in the modern world. His clothes were impeccable, a dark suit that seemed to absorb the dim light of the library. Clara's first thought was that he was just a wealthy insomniac, maybe a professor looking for a rare text. She greeted him with her usual polite smile, asking if he needed help finding anything. He turned, and that's when she saw his eyes. They were dark, ancient, and held a depth that seemed to pull her in. He simply shook his head, a faint, almost sad smile playing on his lips, and glided towards the history section. Night after night, he returned. He never checked out a book. He never spoke more than a few words. He would just sit in a secluded corner, reading texts about forgotten empires and ancient folklore. Clara, ever the curious librarian, started to watch him. She noticed he never seemed to breathe. She noticed the way other patrons would subconsciously give him a wide berth, as if an invisible barrier surrounded him. He was a puzzle, a ghost in her quiet sanctuary, and she found herself becoming obsessed with solving him. One rainy Tuesday, Clara was shelving books near his usual spot. She fumbled, dropping a heavy tome on ancient European myths. As she bent to pick it up, their hands brushed. His skin was shockingly cold, like marble. She jerked her hand back, startled. He looked at her, and for the first time, his mask of polite indifference cracked. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, longing, regret, and a hunger that terrified her. He apologized in a voice that was smooth as velvet but carried the weight of centuries, and then he was gone, melting back into the shadows of the library. That single touch ignited a firestorm of questions in Clara's mind. The cold skin, the unnatural silence, the ancient eyes, his obsession with history. It all started to click into place, like tumblers in a lock. She pulled out the very book she had dropped, the one on European myths. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning for anything, any clue. She passed over werewolves and sprites, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. And then she found it, a chapter on the Strigoi, the Nosferatu. The vampires, the description was chillingly familiar. Beings of immense charm and deadly grace, cold to the touch. Possessing an ancient knowledge and a deep, sorrowful loneliness. They were creatures of the night, forever bound to the shadows. The book described their eyes as hypnotic, capable of captivating their prey. It all matched. It was impossible, insane. But deep down, Clara knew it was true. The quiet stranger who haunted her library wasn't just a man. He was a vampire. Instead of running, instead of screaming, a strange sense of calm washed over Clara. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was overshadowed by an intense curiosity and, oddly enough, a sense of pity. She thought of his sad smile, the loneliness in his ancient eyes. He wasn't a monster from a horror movie. He was a relic, a solitary figure lost in time. She realized he wasn't coming to the library to hunt. He was coming to remember. The history section wasn't just books to him. It was his biography, the story of a world that had moved on without him. The next night, Clara waited. She wasn't sure if he would return after their encounter. The library was emptier than usual, the silence heavier. Just as she was about to lose hope, the door creaked open. He stood there, framed in the doorway, looking more like a specter than a man. He didn't move towards the history section this time. He walked directly to her desk. His eyes met hers, and there were no more secrets between them. He knew that she knew. "You are not afraid," he stated, his voice a low whisper that still managed to fill the entire room. Clara took a breath, her voice steady. "Should I be?" A long moment of silence stretched between them. He studied her face, his expression unreadable. Finally, he gave that same sad, beautiful smile. Perhaps, he said softly, "But I find, for the first time in a very long time, that I hope you are not." He hadn't come for her blood. He had come for something far more precious, something he had lost centuries ago, a connection. He introduced himself as Lucian. He told her stories that made the history books seem like children's tales. He spoke of Roman legions marching under a sun he could no longer feel, of medieval courts filled with intrigue he had witnessed firsthand, of revolutions and wars that were now just footnotes in the texts he read. Clara, in turn, told him about her simple life, about the internet, about coffee shops and movies, all the small, wonderful things of the modern world. They were two beings from completely different worlds, finding common ground in the quiet solitude of the library. Their nightly conversations became the anchor of Claire's life. The fear she initially felt had transformed into a deep and complex affection. She saw the man beneath the monster, the soul trapped within the curse. She learned that his cold skin longed for warmth, and his eternal life was a profound burden. He wasn't a predator, he was a prisoner of his own immortality. The library was no longer just her workplace. It became a bridge across time, a sanctuary where a mortal woman and an ancient vampire could share their loneliness. One evening, Lucian looked at her with an intensity that stole her breath. He told her that her presence had awakened parts of him he thought were long dead. He confessed that being near her was both a joy and a torment, the scent of her life a constant, painful reminder of everything he had lost. It was a confession and a warning. He was dangerous, not by choice, but by nature. The hunger he felt was a real, physical part of him, a beast he kept constantly chained. He was telling her to be careful, to stay away, but Clara couldn't. She had fallen for the lonely scholar, the sad-eyed vampire. She placed her hand over his on the cool surface of the desk, her warmth against his cold. "I'm not afraid of you, Lucian," she whispered. And in that moment, under the dim lights of the library, among the silent stories of the past, their own story was just beginning. It was a dangerous, impossible story, one that defied logic and time itself. She had thought he was just a stranger, but he was so much more. And she was no longer just a librarian. She was the keeper of a vampire's heart. What do you think happens next? Does a story like this have a happy ending? Sometimes the most unbelievable tales are the ones that are true. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next one. See you soon!